Praise Ahia family. He's the Most High, holy and eternal, King of all kings, the only true wise and living God, the Almighty. Well, hello family. I hope you're all happy, blessed and well, and all having good weeks thus far. So coming on tonight with a slightly different style of video, those familiar with Repairers of the Breach may or perhaps may not know that we do also have a sister channel, namely Hebrew Diaspora News. And that channel is concerned with looking at world, global events from the Asherite and or biblical perspectives. So normally we publish as purely an audio podcast. But we're deciding to now shift some of the content to video format as well, of which this is one of our first forays into doing that. So calling the name of this video, Multitude of Spectres and Appearances of the Shedim. And the title, as you can see, is taken from 2 Baruch 27, verse 8. So we're going to come on to provide a reading of 2 Baruch 27, verses 1 to 14. To provide context really to this. So you may or may not have seen articles. Also there was some coverage also in the World News about the fact that the Vatican had published new guidelines really on what they're calling Marian apparitions. So to be exact, they're tidying up on their guidance on recognizing supernatural phenomena, such as apparitions of the Virgin Mary and seemingly blood-soaked crucifixes, according to this article I'm reading in the CNN press. Apparently this new guidance replaces rules drawn up initially in 1978. So this is the first time essentially in 47 years they've actually updated this guidance. They held a press conference on Friday the 17th of May to provide these guidelines, or to provide this document titled Norms for Proceeding in the Discernment of Alleged Supernatural Phenomena. So they are telling us to prepare for an uptick, essentially, in, I guess, people citing apparitions or ghosts, namely spectres, what spectres means in the context of 2 Baruch 27:8. But why? Why now? In addition to that, I also came across this. So apparently a new psychological condition has been identified. And if I get this right, it's called Protopometamorphosia, or demon face syndrome. So it's a syndrome whereby people see the faces of others kind of morph into these very distorted, contorted faces, essentially. Well, let's have a look at what they're actually saying about this phenomenon.
Meet the rare breed with a condition known as the demon face syndrome, or as the fancy medical folks call it, Protopometamorphosia. Yeah, try saying that 5 times and fast. Prosopo means face in Greek. Metamorphosia means perceptual distortions. This condition gives people the unique ability to see distorted facial features, turning ordinary faces into something straight out of a horror flick. Picture this, a 59-year-old truck driver named Victor Shara, just minding his own business in the good old USA, when suddenly, bam, one day he woke up and saw a disfigured-looking man in his house, who later turned out to be his roommate. This happened in 2020 for the first time with him. And it doesn't stop there. He left his house and every face in front of him warped. Every Tom, Dick and Harry starts morphing into some devilish visage. It left poor Victor in doubt. Did he just stumble into a new demonic dimension? Is this what hell looks like? Doctors chalked it up to a possible head injury or a run-in with carbon monoxide. But let's be real. Waking up to a demon world is not your typical morning surprise.
Yes. So why do you think we're suddenly being told now to brace ourselves for an upsurge in sightings of ghosts, people seeing demons, essentially? How odd. So, well, essentially, I guess the actual tea, if you will, on the situation is that it's backfired, essentially. So, in part, it's an admission, in a sense, that this is used as a tool. But basically, we're being told this is used as a tool within this Mystery Babylon current system, and it seems it has backfired. So, so yes, that's essentially the kind of long and short of what we are essentially being told. That there has been a weaponization to an extent of these sorts of phenomena. So I don't say that in every single case that people having mental health issues is always an attack of the Shedim, or an appearance of the Shedim, as Baruch 27 is actually saying. But we're all aware that there are organizations that do actually, I guess, make a study of psychological mind control tactics as well. And we're told that on some levels that they already have ability. We're told that they already have ability to read thoughts or to look to read people's minds, which to an extent is true. I mean, you recall even the Bible says that in the end of days, that everybody will be of one mind to actually worship the devil, essentially, to worship the beast, and to wonder after his image. So that will be a condition of that people go into at the end of days, to really become of this one mind. Of course, if you are one-minded with this entity, whatever it is, this beast, this one that's coming, essentially Satan, then of course you would have ability to look into each other's thoughts on that sort of level. So those who are yoked together in that spirit would have that ability already, and that is already happening on a demonic, on a spiritual level. So essentially we are being told here, quite overtly, that there has been a measure of weaponization of some mental health tactics, perhaps to make people destabilize people, to make people think that they are either hallucinating or hearing voices, and that is used as a tool to some extent as well. So as I say, I don't say that in every single case that is the case, although it very well may well be, but to a great extent, there was an admission, a covert admission here, that this has been what has been going on. And so these tactics they've been utilizing to, I guess, manipulate and control, have backfired, haven't worked. And as is the case with any sort of manipulation, intimidation, or control, essentially it is a spirit of witchcraft, which is why we're told that Mystery Babylon, she is a mistress of witchcrafts. And if you recall, Nahum calls her the mother of harlots, the mistress of witchcrafts, who sells families through her whoredoms and nations through her witchcrafts. So of course, witchcraft on a basic level is just anything, any kind of behavior at all, anything that either intimidates somebody, manipulates them, tries to control them in any way. This is a spirit of witchcraft, essentially. And so we're told that the actual societies that we currently live in, our current Mystery Babylon system, that she is the mistress of this sort of manipulation and control, and that this now has backfired. And so as a consequence, people now on the, I guess, the demonic side have now to brace themselves and to prepare for the unfolding of this particular judgment, in a sense. But let's look at the book of 2 Baruch 27, verses 1 to 14, to see what the prophet Baruch actually had to say about this. So Baruch, if you recall, was actually a contemporary to Jeremiah. In fact, he was Jeremiah's scribe, if you recall the book of Jeremiah. And Jeremiah himself actually explains how he actually dictated many of his prophecies to Baruch, if you recall, most notably the prophecy he dictates when he's actually locked up in the prison. And Baruch then takes the actual prophecy, the actual scroll of the prophecy that he's written, and then goes and reads it before the king, if you recall. But the king, if you remember, actually tears up the prophecy and puts it into the fire, if you recall that the book of Jeremiah does actually tell of the unfolding of that being done. So Baruch, the son of Neriah, was a contemporary to Jeremiah at the time around about the time they were going into captivity in Babylon. But here he has a revelation in 2 Baruch 27, verses 1 to 14, of Yahuwah actually revealing to him the unfolding of judgment in the latter days. So let's have a quick read. It's not a very long reading. Let's have a look at what Baruch actually says, because he actually explains that a multitude of spectres, namely ghosts, and appearances of Shedim, or demons, will also be the unfolding of a judgment. So, of course, why does the judgment fall? The Word of God tells us that the curse causes will not come. So these judgments are only the product or the result of what is sown by man in the earth. So that's the reason that Yahuwah has given us the Ten Commandments. And it's a reason why the Ten Commandments are always, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. The onus of the Ten Commandments is always on the individual, not to do a certain behavior or to do a certain thing, because as Yahuwah has actually constructed and made the world will produce what is sown in it. Which is why we're told not to sow to our flesh corruption. So we're told not to actually dwell in our, I wouldn't say beggarly elements, but in a kind of lower, I think secularly they'd say a low vibrational state. We're told not to actually reside there, or to operate, or to live our lives, or conduct ourselves in a way that is low vibrational in any way, because the consequence of that will be that we'll reap a hornet's nest of that and lower vibrational energy and essence and reward. But anyway, let's have a quick look to see what Baruch is saying here in 2 Baruch 27 verses 1 to 14. So he's saying, and Yah answered and said to me, that time will be divided into 12 parts, and each part has been preserved for that for which it was appointed. In the first part, the beginning of commotions. In the second part, the slaughtering of the great. In the third part, the fall of many into death. In the fourth part, the drawing of the sword. In the fifth part, famine and the withholding of rain. In the sixth part, earthquakes and terrors. In the eighth part, a multitude of spectres namely ghosts, and the appearances of Shedim, so Shedim meaning demons. In the ninth part, the fall of fire. In the 10th part, rapine and much violence. So rapine means really essentially like armed burglary, or someone actually breaking into a property and actually taking or removing property, stealing by force or by violence. So it applies to property as opposed to people. So in the 10th part, rapine and much violence. In the 11th part, injustice and unchastity. In the 12th part, disorder and a mixture of all that has been before. Verse 13 then goes on to say, these parts of that time will be preserved and will be mixed with one with another, and they will minister to each other. For some of these parts will withhold a part of themselves and take from others, and will accomplish that which belongs to them and to others. Hence those who live on earth in those days will not understand that it is the end of times. Okay, so here Yahuwah is essentially giving an unfolding of how he's created the earth really, and what the consequences of certain conduct or behaviors, or what the punishments for various transgressions in the earth or deeds in the earth actually are. So it's actually saying he's actually appointed or divided judgment essentially into 12 parts. So initially we can see here the implication being that initially they unfold quite sequentially. But in the end of days, towards the end of time, they'll then be mixed together and draw from each other. And some parts will withhold their own part and enable other parts to be moved forward, to make it so it will be clear to people actually where they are in the unfolding of judgment or in the actual timeline of creation. And so many will not be aware that they actually are living in the end of days. We also know, of course, why this is all happening, because we're told in 2 Timothy, I believe it's 3, in the last days perilous times will come. But the reason for the perilous times coming is actually quite unusual, perhaps surprising, because we're told the reason why the perilous times actually come in the end of days is because man becomes a lover of himself. So this whole kind of selfie culture that we have currently, really in our world today, is really, I guess, a manifestation or an outworking of that kind of glorification of the self, which is actually inducing or pushing the earth further into judgment and into, well, reaping all of the awful things that 3 Timothy then goes on to actually list. That man will be lovers of themselves, boastful, proud, covetous. He goes on to explain, without natural affection, truce breakers, incontinent. I always find it amusing, because incontinent simply means that a person can't keep a confidence. You tell them something, before you've even got to your front door, they've told the world about it. So that's a characteristic, really, of man without God in the latter days as well. So, yes, second book is telling us essentially that this 8th part, multitude of spectres, ghosts, and the appearance of Shedim, is an outworking of one of the actual core ways of Yahuwah's administration of judgment. And of course, it comes because that's what's been sown, really, in the earth. So it comes upon those who have sown it, essentially. So very often people actually working or practicing witchcraft practices, which I'm quite surprised to see how prevalent this has become in our world currently. But yes. So as I say, the earth will actually produce, or will actually give back what is sown in it. And this is the reason why now we're being told to brace ourselves for an actual unfolding of this particular judgment. So the judgment isn't actually to the righteous or to Yahuwah's people, or those who are actually on the right side of Yahuwah, but it's now this is actually incumbent on the unrighteous, or those who don't know Yahuwah, who have actually sown it, essentially. Which is the reason that the Vatican is producing these guidelines as a kind of covert way of providing a wider indication or wider warning, not just to say it's just going to be purely Marian apparitions, people seeing visions of the Virgin Mary, people having demonic or hallucinogenic apparitions generally. So as I say, I don't say in every single case that it is the case that there has been this kind of spiritual engineering, for want of a better term to call it, or manipulation of kind of mental health related issues in this sort of way. That's not at all the case. There are other reasons as well. It's well known that things like smoking cannabis can make you prone to psychotic incidences as well. So as I say, it's not the case in every single case that it is an unfolding of someone actually manipulating Shedim, essentially, against others to destabilize other people. But in this particular instance, it would appear that this has been going on, and so a judgment now is being administered by Yahuwah as a result of it. So as I say, it really is quite surprising, the kind of degree of, or the way in which people are going increasingly into darkness and into all kinds of occult and evil, dark practices and arts, being totally unaware of the consequences of what they are doing, because Yahuwah, the devil, is a very hard taskmaster. He may give you one thing, but he will take everything else away from you, and you won't immediately be aware of the trade that you've made in consulting him until it's way too late. So as I say, that's what we're actually being told, that this has backfired, essentially. And as I say, it is part of the policy of Mystery Babylon. So the appearances of Shedim and multitude of spectres is going to be the consequence of what we are now going to come on to see. So I think they're trying to tell us really to brace and to be aware that this may be the case. So yes, and it's also unnecessary, really, because Yahuwah has set before us a more excellent way, but making repeated requests for people to turn to repent from their evils, and they're not keen to. So I guess we are where we are. But the gates of hell cannot prevail. I really would say, really give your heart to Jesus, really, because as I say, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be this way. There is a more excellent way. You already say, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open to me, I'll come into him and I'll sup with him. So he's even giving an illustration here of how personable he is, really. He's not a God who's sitting somewhere high and lifted up, floating away ethereally on a cloud somewhere far away. He is a God who's right here, right now, with us, on our level. He can interact with us, and he won't just come and kind of be an impartial spectator to your struggle and your suffering through your day-to-day life. And he's a burden bearer, and he will come and help you, and not only help you but comfort you also. He is really everything that we need. He created every human soul with a connection to him, really. And there is an aspect of your heart or your life that will never be fulfilled until you find Yahuwah, essentially. So, as I say, do give your heart to Christ. So that's all I will add for today. So, remember, family, you and I, we are the repairers of the breach. Hashtag, we will restore his paths. So in going, I'm just going to play out with a video of Tyrese Gibson, really just talking about the whole kind of phenomena of how, I guess, we're all, well, not on the best trajectory, really, but kind of going into darkness more than we should be. And really just sharing, I guess, his insights, really, his sentiments around all of that.
We're in competition right now because they are trying to normalize the devil. They are trying to the devil is on the main stage at award shows and in every video and signs and symbols. And I say, you know what? We need to stop treating our relationship with Jesus like the little buddy that you talk to before you go to bed at night, and not be more vocal about all the things that God means to us and all of the things that God has brought us through. God will send you all of the desires of your heart. And that is something that I want everybody who can hear this interview to know.